Dump truck delivery. 20 plus years ago now, I worked at a landscaping supply business driving a dump truck. I've been a software engineer for most of the time since, but at that time, well, mistakes were made and I spent a few years driving a truck. These were single-axle trucks, 26,000 pounds gross. We often overloaded them by about a ton. Mascuda was on the edge of the area we often delivered to, and we occasionally took rock or mulch to the high school there. I arrived one day with probably 4 or 5 tons of topsoil. If I recall correctly, I had to drive around the school and find someone. I suspect I had been instructed on where to meet people and those people weren't there. I asked after the name I had on the delivery ticket. It was written on there like I should know who they were, when I found someone behind the school and was informed that it was a math or physics, I don't recall, but something STEM related, teacher I was looking for. I think I asked that person if they could find the teacher for me. Eventually I met the teacher and 3 or 4 students in front of the school. I didn't know any of them. I might have still been 19 or 20 at the time and I looked young. It wasn't rare to be forced to find people for a delivery and everything was normal so far. I got out of the truck and was told that the dirt was to be dumped into a planter they had been assembling with decorative blocks around the sign for the high school. It was out, maybe 50 into the grass between the road and the parking lot in front of the school. I hesitated and might have managed to say before being interrupted. I was going to say that the truck would leave marks in the grass. The truck, at 12,000 pounds empty, was heavy enough that it would compress the dirt, and even though the grass would only be flattened, it would leave a trail anywhere the truck went, likely an inch or 2 deep that wouldn't go away anytime soon. The tracks would be conspicuous. I don't recall if I got more than 1 syllable out before I was interrupted with a condescending tone, initially from the teacher, and then from 1 or 2 of the students. I tried to speak again, and again I was met with a mix of disbelief that I didn't understand the instructions, and further attempts to explain what they wanted me to do as though I was 5 years old or didn't speak English. I believe I attempted to speak 2 or 3 times before giving up. I acquiesced, got back in the truck, and proceeded to drive out into the grass, leaving ruts that the groundskeepers would regret for years to come. The grass will be cut off level above these ruts, but you'll still feel them when you drive over them with a mower. I backed the truck up to one side of the planter and dumped dirt in until it was piled above the small semi-oval retaining wall, and I was signaled to stop. The sign was in the middle of the planter, which meant that the pile was only on one side. The other side was pretty much empty. I expected that we would want to drive to the other side of planter. When you dump enough piles of something, you get a feel for what it's going to take to fill a space. But after being told to stop, I got out to suggest that they would want more dirt here to fill the entire planter. Again, I was not able to finish a sentence. I attempted to tell them that when they spread the dirt out in the planter, it wasn't going to be anywhere near the brim. I also would have been willing to stay while they moved some dirt over to the bare area so we could dump more in without spilling out onto the grass. It was clear they had no use for anything I might have to say. The disrespect was clearly intentional. I'm not sure if there was some perceived slight or if this was just a wolf pack who did this to everyone. I was told to go dump the remaining soil. There was probably 2 or 3 tons left in the truck. It could have been put to good use in the planter still, out in a row crop field back behind the school. Here's another intricacy of working with a dump truck you might not intuit. Dirt doesn't spread evenly out of a dump bed. Most trucks have chains for the gate that allow you to meter how quickly the material comes out of the truck. These work great with small rock and gravel. With material that's more prone to clumping, you set the chains such that the gate can open wider and be less prone to clogging, but, for dirt and mulch, it effectively just doesn't work. It hits the gate, compacts a bit, and is clogged. Then you can't release the chains because there are thousands of pounds of material pressed against it. You have to dig it out, which is a lot of work, even with gravity helping, and of course the whole exercise was futile from the start. Thankfully these people didn't know to ask, or I'm sure they would have directed me how to do my job, and then I would have been faced with either arguing with people who didn't care what I thought, or setting the chains and then spending 10 minutes unclogging the gate of the truck. You might guess there's too much nuance in that to convey in a scenario where I've yet to be allowed to finish a sentence. We weren't having a conversation, and these people were enjoying this for some reason. This was a long time ago, and I don't remember much of what was said to me, but I do clearly remember one kid slowly explaining, "Just take the truck over there and drive while you dump it out," or something to that effect, with hand gestures, like you would explain something to a child. By this point, I wouldn't piss on them if they were on fire, so I wasn't inclined to expose myself to any more of this noise. I had them sign for the delivery, and then drove around the school and into the field. I felt a little bad for whoever farmed this field, so I actually did try to make it work as well as possible. I also doubted they had permission. I drove about as fast as I was willing to drive in a recently tilled field and started raising the bed. As topsoil is wont to do, nothing happened until the entire mass started sliding and essentially landed in the field in a large pile. You could tell that, if you knew what you were looking at, the truck had been moving when it was dumped, but it was still a pile that someone was going to have to deal with. I drove past the school a week or so later on another delivery. I was curious to see if they had gone out to the field to get some of the nice sifted topsoil when they realized the planter was barely half filled, or to maybe use it to patch the ruts in the grass. There were still obvious tracks leading to the newly constructed planter. The planter was half filled with dirt, leaving the back of multiple courses of block exposed. And the large pile of dirt was still standing out in the field. The planter stayed that way for years. I don't know if anyone ever fixed it. The entire complex was apparently demolished and has been replaced with a new building now. I moved out of the area a long time ago. I'm not entirely certain that this was malicious compliance. I wasn't trying to be malicious, but I wasn't going to argue with people who were being both insulting and borderline hostile. I held that job way too long, maybe 6 years, so I certainly had more bad or weird encounters with customers, like the time I guess I disappointed a couple trying to have a deliveryman three-way. But this one was one of the worst. Reading u/SKWRL Tails Tale reminded me of my own mandatory meeting. A few years back, I was contractor for a state agency whose job it was to advise other state contractors on environmental laws, regulations, policies, and best practices. Yes, dear readers, I was a contractor telling other contractors who, what, where, when, how, and how much they could do their jobs. The only stick that I carried was that the agency that I contracted to was regulatory, i.e., it could impose fines/remediation. To make matters worse, I was a middle-aged, clean-shaven white dude with clean boots and a bright white hard hat showing up in a state-owned vehicle that was just as clean. How this works is that my agency bills the other contractor with a set rate for hours. The other contractor had to work this cost into the contract with the state, i.e., the more hours that I worked, the more I cut into their profit. One project that I ended up working on was a larger project with a national construction company. This was unusual as bigger companies usually had their own environmental compliance people. I had been working with that company for a little over a year when they broke ground. I emailed the lead foreman, whom I had not yet met, to let him know that I would be on site the following week. I get a response saying that to be on site I had to attend the stand-up meeting at the yard every day that I was to be on site. I, of course, let him know that I had all my certs, both federal and state, and had already attended the company's biannual safety meeting and would not be at the stand-up meeting and that it would cost the company to have me attend. I CC'd my point of contact, POC, with the company. Yes, you all see where this is going. I was told that I had to. No response from my POC. Cue malicious compliance. My time started when I walked out the front door. The yard was over an hour away, depending on traffic, plus the meeting, usually 45 minutes to an hour, none of which was applicable to me. Then travel to the job site, again depending on traffic, 2 hours, then travel back home. That added roughly 4 hours a day to my day, which meant that I usually went more than 8 hours, which is billed at time and a half, and well beyond projected time. Plus the mileage and fuel on the state-owned vehicle. Oh! BTW, occasionally, the cell service would be terrible, and the hotspot wouldn't allow me to do my work on site, so I would have to do it at home. I sent an invoice over to accounting every other week. Also billable time. First billing cycle, nothing. Cool. Second cycle I get an email from VP of Operations with the PayOCC demanding an explanation. I forwarded email, invoices, mileage logs, and my timesheets, CC'd POC and foreman, to VP. In less than an hour I get an email from POC with VP and foreman CC'd that I could do what I pleased, when I pleased, including total stoppage of work on site, and the only person that I was accountable to was the POC say. Damn, I was wished that I could have been party to that conversation. I took the spouse out to a nice dinner. Sure, I won't wear a tank top during my workout. A little background first. I, now 45 meters, used to be a military driver in the Dutch Navy a long time ago, and at some point I was stationed at a little Navy base, meant for physical rehabilitation of Navy personnel. With little, I mean a base with less than a few hundred people. My function was to drive patients to the military hospital, CMH, to drive groups of people to the swimming pool, etc. When I was at home in the weekends, I would do my workout at my regular gym, but on workdays when finished with my work, I would train in a small gym on site where I was stationed, because I would stay on base during the week. I was about 21 years old and I was preparing for my very first bodybuilding contest, so I was muscular and working out a lot. At some point the gym manager, a Marine sergeant, told me that somebody at upper management was offended by my looks and that I was no longer allowed to wear a tank top during my workout. My tank top was wide-fitting and purely functional, and seemingly nobody was ever bothered by me wearing it, at least that's what I thought. I argued with him about how unfair I thought this was and pointed towards a fellow gym-goer who was also wearing a tank top and asked the sergeant why this guy wasn't told to not wear a tank top during his workout. This man was athletic and in a fair shape, but not bulky and muscular. The sergeant, I got along with him very well, agreed with me, but told me that the officers in charge ordered him to tell just me, and orders are orders. He agreed with me though, but higher up already decided, so he felt that he did not have a choice. At that point I just took my loss and finished my workout. The next day I found the perfect solution and took one of the shirts we got in Dutch, PSU, Persoonlijk Standaard Uitrusting, what roughly translates to personal standardized gear. This shirt was a stretchy, slim-fitted, white shirt, so I decided to wear that for my next workout. When I arrived to the gym, the sergeant shook his head and told me that this was not what the officers in charge would appreciate, so I told him this was what the Navy gave me, so it cannot be wrong. My body was much more on display compared to the tank top. The tight fit showed everything, especially when I was sweating. I was fully compliant with the dress code and nobody would be able to dispute that. The sergeant laughed because he knew I was right, but told me the officers probably would be pissed. I kept doing my workout like this during that week, and after the weekend the sergeant told me with a smile that higher-ups retracted their order and to please start wearing my tank top again. Thanks for watching. If you liked what you saw, make sure to give a thumbs up, subscribe, and ring the bell for more videos. See you soon again.